All right, good evening. Welcome to Real Talk, where we take real topics and real issues and bring you real solutions. I want to go over a couple of quick notes for you, and then I'm going to introduce to you tonight's guest. First, we want to remind you that we're here every Sunday night at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right on our Facebook page, to help provide ongoing education and resources for nannies, newborn care specialists, postpartum doulas, other caregivers, and parents. Please be sure and share this with anybody that you think might be interested, because everybody's welcome to join us and to learn. And be sure that you head over to our website at Newborn Care Solutions and click on the Education tab. It'll take you where you can find a variety of free resources that are made available to help you. If you create an account there, you'll get notified. Anything new gets added, and we have a growing number of free resources. So I am so excited to introduce you to tonight's guest. Dr. Deborah Gilboa is someone that I first had the pleasure of meeting about 5 years ago at an INA conference in Cancun, Mexico. And she was our keynote speaker that weekend. And the audience loved her. And I was pretty impressed because I'm kind of a science geek. And so to have somebody be able to talk science to a broad spectrum audience and be able to make it real life, it was pretty cool to hear her talk. Since then, I've watched her following row and have been amazed at her calm, logical, and practical approach and solutions to the stressful things of life, and that continue to bring guidance and calm to us in an ever more kind of crazy and not always understood world. We're going to post her full bio for you on our page because I want to allow enough time for our discussion. But known as Dr. G, she is renowned for her sense of humor and common sense advice. She has an amazing background, including being a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine and Carnegie Mellon University. And for those of you that are nannies out there, you'll know one of my nanny babies graduated from Carnegie Mellon as well. She's also fluent in ASL, a mom of 4 boys, a practicing physician, as well as a regular on the Today Show, Good Morning America, and The Doctors. So welcome, Deb. We're really excited to have you here tonight.
Thanks, Tanya. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, so I reached out because we wanted to be able to talk to you. I'm seeing a lot of discussions online, a lot of questions, a lot of information that we don't always know how to disseminate. But more importantly, so many of us don't really understand, how do we talk to our kids about what's going on right now? And so we have a few questions to talk with you about. If the feed comes up in our Facebook and I can see it, if I can see the questions, then if we have questions from the audience, we'll take those as well. But if not, we want to go in depth into this a little bit. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about is, I have heard some parents saying they're just telling their kids, hey, it's spring break again, or this is an extension of spring break. And they're not letting them see or hear anything about what's going on in our world right now. Is this a good idea? Is this a good approach for how to help kids?
This is a completely understandable approach. I completely see why this is what parents would be inclined to do and ask their caregivers to do as well. But here's the thing. Any child who is old enough to understand what spring break is having conversations and hearing conversations, noticing the news, picking up on your anxiety and your stress. And more than anything, they're seeing the big changes that are happening around them. So many of our usual patterns have changed that a usual explanation doesn't suffice. So telling kids everything's normal, everything's fine, when so many things have obviously changed, leads kids either to question themselves or to question you. And what our kids, our nanny kids, our own kids need to know in this time of uncertainty is that they can trust us. We don't have to tell them everything, and we're going to talk about how to answer questions in a developmentally appropriate way, and that we don't have to be entirely transparent, but we can't lie. Because when we lie to kids and they figure it out, and in this emergency, they will, because this is going to go on longer than spring break would make sense. then what they know is all the sands have shifted under their feet. They need to be able to trust the information they're getting from their grown-ups. They don't have to trust that it's the whole story, but they have to know that we're not lying to them.
Great. Thank you. It's one of those things that, as a parent, you just don't always know, and you want to protect your kids. We want to keep them safe, and sometimes not telling them feels like the right thing. So it makes total sense to me too that a lot of parents are doing that. So if I'm supposed to be talking to my kids, if I'm supposed to be having these conversations, being transparent, even if I'm not telling them everything, should I be telling like my 5-year-old or my 8-year-old the same thing that I'm telling my 12 and 15-year-old?
I want there to be some conversation that you can have as a whole group. I don't want you to give your kids the sense that they can't talk to each other about what they're experiencing. However, your 12-year-old won't be a bit surprised to know that they can handle some stuff that their younger sibling can't. And there are some questions or some parts of the conversation you'd like to have with them when their younger siblings are asleep, actually asleep, not in the other room and you think they're not paying attention. One of the biggest challenges of this time is that most of us live in homes that are small enough that there are no secrets anymore. I had an interesting question this week from someone who said, I've seen that everybody's saying, oh, this is perfect for introverts, but I'm an introvert and I can't get any alone time.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely true that we are somewhat on top of each other. And I really want adults to be careful in terms of thinking that they're having a private conversation or a boundaried conversation because a child has earbuds in or because a child seems to be paying attention to something else, when what they may be paying the most attention to is
Mm-hmm.
you, your words and your tone and your facial expressions and your body language.
Absolutely. Are you still there?
I am.
Okay. So I've lost my screen, but I'm going to keep going and we'll keep answering our questions since you're still there. So if I'm not supposed to be telling them the same thing, how do I know how to differentiate or what is age appropriate for the kids that I'm working with?
So there's really two questions. One is, what can we talk about in front of everyone? And so you have to take it to the common denominator. So if the youngest person in your home is 4, then you're going to talk to everybody about it, not in an insulting way, but with the language and the information that you're comfortable with your 4-year-old having. So how do you decide what that is? Well, the best way is to do what their preschool teachers or what a 2nd grade spelling teacher does all the time, which is give a little pretest. Ask, hey, have you heard of coronavirus? In a non-judgmental way. And then if they say no, then you say, okay, I want to tell you a couple of things. But if they say yes, then say, great, tell me what you've learned. Tell me what you've heard, because that shows you where to enter the conversation. By the way, I want you to do the same thing with your 14-year-old, because if that's the youngest person in your house, or if that's a one-on-one conversation that you're having, the first thing you want to do is to understand where they are, just like your spelling teacher wants to know which list you're ready for, what you've already learned, what you might have wrong, and what you do clearly understand. I want you to give that pretest so that you can enter into the learning and the conversation at the right spot. And not in a way that insults them or tells them stuff that they think, gosh, you must think I'm a baby, I already knew that, but also in a way that catches any misinformation that they've picked up. And then you can start from there. That gives you the chance to understand where they're at. And also, because you're an expert in this kid, to figure out what they're feeling, to not just listen to their words. You're not just a spelling teacher looking at a list. You're watching their facial expression and looking at their body language to get a sense of, are they feeling anxious about this? Are they feeling bored? Do they think it's dumb and nothing to worry about? Where are they? Because the best thing we can do for our kids is figure out where they are before we try to help them get to where we want them to be.
Right. Absolutely. So I'm going to kind of skip a question here and come back to it because you're leading into one that's just a little farther on my list, but it's a perfect lead in. So when I'm talking to my kids, how do I get my teenager or my pre-teenager to understand the importance of not spreading rumors and not spreading fear right now, and also to not listen to it when their friends are doing it? Because we know there's just tons of bad information out there right now.
The best way to get any teen or tween to consider changing their behavior is to do your best to avoid telling them what not to do and try to call them to doing something hard and important. So, for example, you might say, when they say to you, well, I heard that you can't get this if you're not Chinese. Just for example, that's something totally wrong that I've seen on social media. So you say, okay, so I happen to know that's not true, but let's go fact check that. Let's go to an evidence-based source like the CDC's website or the World Health Organization or someplace like that. Wow, okay, you heard that. Where did you hear it? Well, I saw a TikTok or I saw it on Snapchat or a friend of mine said that. Say, wow. And you know what? You have to be a really strong person to double check what your friend tells you, to be a little critical in that way. You don't have to be critical of your friend, but you have to be a really mature person to stand up and say, thanks for that information. And then to yourself think, I want to double check that. I wonder if that's true. But in this time where we're experiencing something totally new to everyone, we have to double check our information with a trusted adult, with an evidence-based source, with a few sources. With teenagers, you can talk to them about primary sources because they're learning about that in school. But asking them to stand up and to say, wow, it would be so easy to pass along that TikTok or just like it and keep scrolling. What would it take for you to comment, I'm not sure that's true, or I read that that isn't true. It'd be great if you took this down. How hard is that? And not in a you better do it kind of way, but in honestly, I'm interested to know, is that even possible for you? Or is there a way you could reach out at least to the people who trust you to say, hey, I saw this and then I learned it wasn't true and I just wanted to make sure you guys knew.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's the conversations almost feel overwhelming without kind of giving in to our own fears and our own concerns, and yet kind of striking a good balance with our kids. I know that at least for me, with a teen and a preteen in the house, I'm getting the accusations of being a helicopter parent, and that I really want my kids to understand that this is a serious situation and that these guidelines are in place for the protection of everybody, that I'm not trying to make their lives miserable, but not scare them either. How do we get them to get that message, to understand it?
There are a couple of things to notice here. And one is, this is an amazing opportunity. For us as adults, what we know, luckily in the medical field, what I can tell you is that at least kids who don't have major medical issues separate from this, they're likely to be fine, even when they do catch coronavirus. But what we also know is that all of these children that we're taking care of and that we're raising will face other times in their lives of tremendous fear and uncertainty. So the most important thing that we are teaching them is how to manage in times of fear and uncertainty. So that's a really big skill set, but you have to allow them to experience the fact that there is some fear and there is real uncertainty here. And it is totally fine, Tanya, for you to say to your own kids, I don't know if I'm overreacting, but the stakes are too high to risk it. So the next time after the coronavirus, after this whole quarantine issue and stay home thing is over, we can talk about something that you think you ought to be allowed to try that you think I've been overprotective about. For example, going to the movies by yourself with friends. Let's just take that. If that's something your child's been asking you to do and you've been hesitant, and now you say, you know what, about that, I agree. And I want to work up to that because I understand what going to the movies is. And I know that in a few years, of course, you should be able to do that. So if I feel you're not ready, I'm going to help you get ready and go do that. But this is an unknown quantity. And like I just said about calling teenagers and tweens to hard, important behavior, this is their chance to save lives without any hyperbole, without any exaggeration. This is their chance to make a tremendous difference in the community by keeping people safe, by keeping their friends who have asthma or other health issues safe, by keeping their older neighbors and family members safe, by keeping their very youngest siblings, like babies or pregnant people in your world, safe. By doing this hard thing, we are leaving each other alone because we care about each other. And if you want to know how to make an impact, have them find YouTubers, TikTok stars, people who are on Instagram that they really respect, who are putting out these same messages. And you can easily Google tween or teen idols speaking about coronavirus, and you will find a lot of people they admire who are saying what you are saying. And what a gift that is for us as adults in kids' lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they listen to outside influences a whole lot more than they listen to their own parents a lot of times.
Yep. I see in the chat, Tanya, that we're getting a lot of questions about preschoolers.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to address the two issues I'm seeing come up in questions.
Yeah, if you can see it, have at it, because I can't see it.
Yeah, I can. And one of the questions that I'm seeing is, the 2-year-old or the 3-year-old I'm taking care of has no idea there's anything going on. Should I say anything? And what I would say is, as they notice patterns changing, as they notice schedules changing, as they notice their mom or dad staying home to work from home and that things are really different, it's good to stay tuned into them. As a matter of fact, someone asked, I'm home and what should I be looking for? Like, I don't feel like my 2-year-old is anxious or showing a lot of awareness of these major changes, but what should I watch for and address? Well, as nannies, you know that behavior is communication. So as you're seeing behavior change, you're going to start to look for what's the communication that's happening there, what's happening behind that. But if you're not seeing behavior or attitude or schedules in your kiddo change, you don't have to address this. I do want you to talk to mom boss or dad boss about what you might say. If they say, why can't I go pet that puppy across the street that I'm used to going to pet? We know he's friendly. And a medical note, we shouldn't be petting other people's animals because they are surfaces that can carry coronavirus. Or why can't I take the slice of cheese at the grocery store that's just wrapped in a piece of paper from the deli counter? Or why don't I get to go grocery shopping with you? Why are you leaving me home with my mom working so you can go do the grocery shopping? As they start to have questions, you should not feel caught off guard or uncertain about what is okay with mom boss or dad boss for you to say. But if they're not asking, it's good to have that arsenal, but you don't have to have that conversation yet. And what you should be looking for and what you should be asking mom boss and dad boss about are sleep patterns, eating patterns, toileting changes, clinginess changes. Somebody says here, I'm with one 3 days a week, and the last 2 days he didn't even want to get dressed and go out. And I do want to encourage you to keep kids on their schedule as best you can. That if they have to be quiet at different hours because of people working from home, or if things like that have changed beyond your control, then they do. But if you're able to have wake up time be the same and still getting dressed and still having breakfast and still doing the usual activities, even though they can't go out to a gym class or they can't go to a lap sit and story time at the library, that you do those things here. And when you get a verbal 3-year-old or 2-year-old who says, why not library? You can say, oh, there are a lot of people who are sick. And so we're not going to go to the library so that nobody extra gets sick, but we're going to still do our sit and learn. Or look, on the computer, our librarian that we love to listen to is reading a story. So sit on my lap and we're going to listen to our story here. We're doing it differently today. Isn't this interesting? And just answering the question that they asked you. See if they ask a follow-up question. If they do, then you're going to do your best with it at a developmentally appropriate level. I want to encourage nannies to remember, parents know, I hope, and I know because I've worked with so many parents who have nannies, parents know that you are the youth development expert. So they're watching to hear how you talk about this, the tone of voice you take, the way you present this, and that's actually informing them. You know, I hope that you are always doing parent education. Everything you do, everything you don't do, every facial expression, everything you say, they're like, oh, is that what I should be doing? Is this going okay? I'm going to try that too if it gets the response that I wanted. So when you're having those conversations, remember that you can be really proactive at helping kids ask about their feelings, talk about what they're noticing without sending them into a tailspin of anxiety. And for the kids with anxiety, or the kids that you're about to uncover their anxiety that you weren't aware of, if you send them into a tailspin, that's okay. What you're going to do next, by helping them learn to manage those feelings, that's where the real value is, because this isn't the last time they'll be in a situation that's frightening and uncertain.
Absolutely. That is amazing. Thank you.
There's also a really common question.
Let me see if there's any other good questions.
Yeah, there's also a really common question that I see here from Tara, who says, what do you think about lifting some screen time limits or bans for little ones. So I got to go with the American Academy of Pediatrics. That's going to say no screen time for under kids 2 years of age. However, one of the things I keep saying to people who are watching kids is it's okay to lower the bar. It's okay to lower the bar a little bit and give yourself some grace, because you can't ignore the fact that you are also dealing with uncertainty and fear. You, as the nanny, who would probably never talk to one of your own family members during your work hours, if you get the emergency text from your dad that says, call me ASAP, and you plop that kid in front of an iPad so you can call your dad and find out if he's on his way to the hospital or something, that's okay. And I want you to, if you have the relationship to, talk to your mom and dad bosses about being a little bit more gentle and relaxed about those things. I've heard from parents saying, is it bad for preschoolers to be home quarantined? And I just want to say to you, until very recently, all preschoolers spent all their time at home. This idea of preschool is wonderful and it's valuable, and there's a lot of great things that happen there. But I can't imagine a college admissions counselor looking at an application or an applicant and saying, oh, you were homeschooled for preschool, weren't you? I'm sorry, you just won't do. That's not really something that we have to worry about, even with pre-K for this time. So when we have the opportunity to keep to the regular schedule and keep to the regular boundaries, that's awesome. But give yourself some grace and just don't relax a boundary that you'll never be able to get back. Parents have been asking me about co-sleeping with their kids. And if you didn't used to co-sleep and you don't want to co-sleep with them from now until they're 7, you might not want to co-sleep. You might want to lay with them in their bed or have a family sleep out in the living room one night if you need to. But in general, if you invite a kid who's verbal back into your bed, they may be there for a really long time. If that's okay with you, that's fine. But if it's not okay with you, I don't want you to relax a boundary. I don't want you to say, well, normally we don't hit, but because there's a lot going on, it's okay to hit. The other reason not to totally relax your rules and your boundaries and have none is because it's very frightening for children. It's frightening for children who are 5, and it's frightening for children who are 15, and everywhere above and below that and in between. Because then they think, wow, the world really is ending.
Wow. Are there other good questions that you're seeing that you want to address, or?
There's a longer one from Jennifer, and I can't read the whole thing, but she's talking about how she says, I'm facing the prospect of not seeing my nanny kids, twin boys age 3.5, for a very long time and maybe never. Mom boss is autoimmune compromised and is saying this could be 6 to 8 months, and it really breaks my heart. Jennifer, I can't see the question because I don't have a way to expand the comment, but I will say to you, there's a lot of loss that's happening for a lot of people in this, and you have my empathy. That loss, everyone in this community knows the loss of saying goodbye to a nanny kid, but doing it when it was unexpected, when it's amidst so much other fear and uncertainty, is, I think, in some very real ways, one of the hardest ways to have this happen. And I'm really sorry that you're going through that. And when you're thinking about, if I'm imagining perhaps your question is how to talk to them about that, because that was a lot of our topic for tonight, Tanya's and mine. And I would say the exact same way that you've seen advice in the nanny community to talk to kids. Oh, Jennifer said, she wrote the rest of her question. What advice can I give mom boss when they ask where I went? And I think for 3.5-year-olds, if they're neurotypical, and I'm just going to assume for right now that they are, that she should be clear and honest with them. And if it's okay with you and with her, give them opportunities to see you digitally. Maybe let you, if you've done bedtime with them, let you do bedtime with them virtually, or read stories with them, or have a time each day or a couple of times a week that you connect to them by reading to them, by asking them about their day, by hanging out with them while they're playing whatever they're playing, in a way that gives them a little sense of structure and normalcy. And when they say, why aren't you here? Say, to keep everybody safe, we have to only be home with our families right now. And it's so hard because I love you guys so much. So it's okay to have empathy for how they're feeling, to let them know a little bit of how you're feeling, and to welcome mom to do the same. She says story time. That's a great idea. So there are, and I'm going to try and scan through, if you guys don't mind, my arm in the screen for a minute. Somebody's saying to Jennifer, you're getting a lot of love on here. Sorry that this had to happen, and all of those things. Is anybody else? Oh, what do I tell a 2-year-old about why we can't leave the house? That's a really good question. And I would say developmentally, and yeah, you gotta run it by the parents, but I would say developmentally, you can say, there's a new kind of sick that people are getting, and we're still learning about it. But right now, the safest thing is for everybody to stay home or to stay outside, but distanced from other people. So those are things that kids can understand, and they might ask questions. Am I going to get sick? I don't want you to make promises you can't keep. So please don't say, no, you're not. The research looks like 7 out of every 10 Americans may get this. That doesn't mean we'll all be very ill. Some of us may not even know that we have it, but that means we should not be promising kids that they won't get this if only we are careful enough, because we don't know enough about this, and that does not seem to be true. So don't make those promises, but say, I'm not sure. And if you are, we'll take care of you like we always do when you don't feel good. So relate it to something that they're used to. And if you're thinking of an older child who asks, am I going to get this? Then you can say, I don't know. I hope not. And so we're going to focus on the things that we can control. And when we're struggling, we're going to talk about how we deal with uncertainty.
Absolutely. What do we tell them when we don't have answers to their questions? Like, how long is this going to last? Or what's happening? Or one that I got this week. Is my grandma going to die?
So don't give my medical answer, which is like, of course your grandma's going to die, but not necessarily from this. Everybody dies.
Yeah, we do say that in our house, actually.
Well, it totally depends on how you manage people, right?
Yeah.
On what your culture is in your family. So I'm sorry, you asked me one before, is my grandma going to die? And what we have to say about that is to say, boy, I sure hope not. And I have no reason in particular to think that she will, but we're going to do our part to try and help protect her. You guys, I want to tell you about a really cool research study that was done some years ago in 2 different African villages that were not very geographically distant from each other, similar in language and in religion and in culture. They went into one, they were trying to prevent contagious disease from spreading, fecal oral route, right? Which nannies know, but for everybody who's listening, that's you got to wash your hands between when you go to the bathroom and when you touch anything, especially food. So they go into one village and they say to the elementary aged kids and the preschool aged kids, if you have to wash your hands right after you go to the bathroom so you don't get sick. Then they went into the neighboring village and they said to the same age kids, you have to wash your hands right after you go to the bathroom so your little brothers and sisters and your grandparents don't get sick. And here's what they discovered. They had quadruple the rates of compliance when they told kids that they were doing this to protect other people. So we know that we can call even little kids to protective action, and they want to be helpful. This surprises none of you. The kids want to know that their actions matter and that they're valuable and that they're important and that they're impactful. So this is a great opportunity to prove to them that that's exactly what they are.
That is amazing. I'm a geek anyway about research studies, so I love hearing things like that, especially when there's such a profound impact on that.
Candace is asking, is it still okay to be doing a daily walk? And how do we explain why kids can't play on playgrounds? So 2 different things. One, Candace, I don't know where you live, and there are some very crowded parts of New York City where I don't know if I would say it was still okay to take a walk. I want it to be. I very much want it to be. But in most places, it's totally reasonable. Just got to stay 8 feet away from other people. I know they're saying 6, but I'm saying 2 arms length. So, if you reached out your arm and they reached out their arm and you couldn't touch, then you're okay. And if you're going around, people are congregating on the sidewalk, take your nanny kiddo's hand and go into the street and go around. And about not playing on playground equipment, I want us to just remind kids that most of what we're trying to do here is prevent touching things. So when we go outside, we're touching the inside of our clothes and the inside of our socks, and my socks are touching the inside of my shoes, and my shoes are touching the sidewalk. Okay, when I come in, I should probably take off my shoes and wash my hands just in case. But what I shouldn't do when I go out is touch park benches and touch fence railings. And I have 4 kids who always drag their hands along, and we live in the city, drag their hands along the fence railings, climb on everything. It's not just playground equipment. They climb on everything. They would walk over parked cars if I would let them. So we're not dragging our hands on cars. We're not touching store windows. And this is urban, I understand. But even dragging our hands over the bushes, touching other people's animals, if we control what we touch, then it's totally safe and great. You can touch your own bike. If you're going to go take a bike ride, you can touch your skateboard and your helmet if you're riding a bike or riding a skateboard. But protecting what you touch is really what matters. And that's why we're not going to use water fountains. We're not going to play on playground equipment. We're not going to bap on the sides of the bus stop as we go by, even if that's usually our habit. And nannies, as you start to walk up to that bus stop that they're used to drumming on, remind them, please, because it's really easy to forget. Habits are just that, they're habits.
Absolutely. So Jennifer says the 5-year-old has decided that hand washing is his superhero power because he can help
keep people healthy. And that's absolutely true. This is, and they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing projects that are happening for little kids to make cards, for seniors who are in senior centers and in homes where they can't see their family. There are a lot of people sharing addresses and names online. I actually just tonight saw something online this afternoon and was inspired. And I took a box of new sidewalk chalk that had already been by the manufacturer divided into different packs and sealed in saran wrap. And we took one of these and wrote a note and put it on all of our neighbors saying, hey, let's beautify our sidewalks. So when people are taking their socially distanced walks, they can see our beautiful pictures and our warm words of welcome. And so that's something we can do. There are all kinds of ways that we can keep young kids seeing the positive impact that they can have. And Tanya, for you and your tween and your teen, if you can convince them that this really matters, have them make a TikTok explaining why it matters. Have them do an Instagram live explaining why they can't stand it either, but they're totally gonna not see their grandparents, or they're gonna not go out and hang with their friends, but they're gonna hang out virtually. Let them get on Snapchat and be an inspiration to the people that are watching them, because we listen to our peers better than we listen to our parents. That's true from certainly from age 12 to age 20 for most people.
Yeah, so I'm not going to let my kids watch that part of that,
right?
Because they don't have any of those social media apps. We're old school here.
Okay, well then absolutely have them. If you're allowing them to text with their friends, start a text chain about, one reason, like, who are you staying home for? Mm-hmm. And I don't care if it's an immune compromised celebrity that they like, or a grandparent that they like, or a friend's mom who's pregnant, but they can text their friend, I'm staying home to protect this person. Who are you staying home to protect? So I see a question here that says, my client quarantined on Monday. Her husband is an MD and I lost my income of 3 babies. However, doing my part by staying home. Lucy, I'm so sorry. You're right. She said, Lucy, I do want to correct you one thing. You say that the virus stays on metal for up to 9 days. That's not what we're seeing. We're seeing that it stays in plastic and metal up to 3 days, on cardboard maybe up to 24 hours, and not necessarily in amounts that will cause illness. We just don't know. So not 9 days. That was the first estimate we saw a few weeks ago. The research is pretty clear in the New England Journal of Medicine just this week that it's about 3 days. And I really do want to tell you that I'm so sorry. A lot of people are losing their work. And I really believe that all of these parents are going to need you again, and that doing things like professional continuing education, like you're doing tonight, staying connected to the community so you can hear from people who need help as soon as they need help. Also, for older kids, being creative about, can you reach out to any of your nanny families where the parent is trying to supervise digital learning, distance learning, and do their own work? Can you, I leaned on my own babysitter for this, who has a cough, so I don't want her to come over for her sake or ours. Also, I'm an MD and I don't want to expose anybody else who's coming into my home that I don't have to expose. But I asked her to digitally hang out with my 11-year-old and make sure that he's doing what he needs to do. So we found a way over a video chatting app for her to make sure that he stays focused, comes back to class when he's supposed to, is getting the work done, is writing down his assignments. So for older kids, they're doing distance learning. You might be able to do distance supervising. I know it won't be the full hours that you're used to having, but there are ways to be creative. That story time, reaching out to parents to say, can I give you a half an hour break every night? And I would like to be compensated, but only this, not what you're used to paying me for the whole week. Are there ways that we can do this?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be needing that myself in a couple of weeks because our school's going back. We actually are legit on spring break this week. But when they go back, We don't go back to school. The earliest would be the 10th, and we are going to go to digital learning. And my husband and I both work from home, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but we'll manage. So one final thing, is there anything that you would suggest, if you could leave us with one kind of solid nugget, is there anything that we as the parents, as the trusted nannies and caregivers of these children, is there anything that we can say that will help them feel safe and secure, even when we're not really feeling that way ourselves right
Yes. I want you to remind them, and therefore remind yourself, of the things you know are true. We take care of each other. We listen to each other. We communicate with each other. And as long as we keep doing that, we will learn to do new things. And we'll get to do some stuff that we never really quite have time to do. I want to remind all of the adults who are listening that uncomfortable, which this is, it's so uncomfortable, and I'm not making light of it, really uncomfortable is not the same thing as unsafe. As a matter of fact, what we're doing now is we're experiencing tremendous discomfort in order to be safer. And as hard as that is, we can do it, and we can teach the kids in our lives that they can do it this time and whatever the next obstacle is.
Fantastic. Well, I am so thankful to have had you join us this evening and to share your wisdom. And the practical application of it is probably my favorite part, because I don't like esoteric ideas. I like where the rubber meets the road.
Either, right?
So I love it, and I'm so appreciative, and I know that our audience is so appreciative as well. For those of you that are out there, please remember to go to our website, click the education tab, check out our free resources, and join us on Sunday evenings at 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for Real Talk. In our feed, we've also posted Dr. G's bio and where you can find more information about her as well. That's all there. So thank you all for joining us this evening, but also thank you so much, Dr. G. We really appreciate all your time and your expertise.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I'm glad to be here. I hope everybody can stay safe, stay connected, and stay home.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. And everybody have a great night. We will see you next week.